I'm Chris with Eddie Dowd for MMA Barn on the line with Marcus, the Irish hand grenade Davis, to talk about his life, what's been up with the man himself. Marcus, we appreciate you taking the time to chat, man.
Absolutely no problem, and I appreciate you setting it up. Let's do it.
All right, well, first things first, let's start off with the status of your fighting career. Where's that at the moment, and what have you been up to?
Well, I am officially retired. I haven't, I didn't go public with it. I didn't do what a lot of fighters do when they go and they contact whatever MMA .tv or the underground, and everybody goes public and they post all this stuff. But I ended up having to retire at the beginning of the year. I had been struggling for about 3 or 4 years with my eyesight, and kind of hid it from, doctors and whatnot. I mean, I had a doctor that knew what was going on with my eye, and but then when I was going and I was getting licensed and stuff, I kind of hid that from the ophthalmologists and the optometrists and whoever I had doing my paperwork. But I now have superior oblique muscle palsy and third cranial nerve palsy of my left eye. So after I started having, basic horizontal double vision in about late 2009, early 2010. And then at the beginning of this year, it changed all of a sudden from horizontal double vision to vertical double vision. And so that was it. That was when I knew it was time to lay up the gloves and move forward with my life.
Now, I'm curious, and I don't want to pry too much into your personal life, but how do you treat something like that? Is there surgery required, or is it just constant medicines?
Well, yeah, I will be having a surgery where they'll actually take my eye out of my head, and they will do some repairs on it and put it back in, and they're actually going to do then. I have a lot of problems with the eye. I've had 2 full retinal tears in the left eye, and I've got a cataract in the eye, so they're going to do they'll use the laser on it, do the repair on the cataract at the same time. So I'll have a lot of work done on that eye, and that'll happen about mid-2015 is when I'm going to be having a surgery done.
I'm curious, is that a hereditary thing, or is it something that you accrued or, through fighting and, the constant blows to the face?
Yeah, it's from fighting. Yeah, I have no hereditary eye problems in my family that I know of anyways.
Yes. Marcus, this is Eddie Dowd. I had a question. What have you been up to since you stopped fighting?
Well, a lot of people know that I own a couple of gyms here in the state of Maine, and so I've been really working on growing those. Outside of that, I've got other businesses and other things that I do, but right now the focus has been really growing my schools. My school here in the Brewer, Maine area is grown substantially since I've retired. We have over 100 clients, which is quite a few to have. In this area, we live in a city that has a population of only about 30,000 people, and so it's not a really huge place. And to have over 100 members in this small location that we have alone is quite impressive. So outside of that, I've got a good sized amateur team of about 20 guys that fight amateurly. And I've turned pro and still have guys that fight professionally under me. Right now, I think we only in-house have about maybe 5 to 8 guys that are professionals, but we're grooming some to soon to turn pro. And then I've been working, obviously everybody knows and has heard about me working with Tim Boach, and on his last fight, he was in a do-or-die situation. He had been working before that with Matt Hume, but was on a 3-fight losing streak, and was put into a position where he was fighting Brad Tavares, and Tavares at that time was ranked, I believe, number 11 in the world, and he thought that, this was where they were going to try to give him his walking papers. It's very rare that you even get 3 losses in UFC anymore, and you still have your job, and, definitely if you're going to have 4, you're going to get cut. So he reached out to me, and we talked about it, and I told him what my thoughts were. And he came out here, came back, basically he's from right outside of this area. He's a Maine boy himself. So came back to Maine and trained with me and my team. We got him ready and took him to the fight, which was held right here in Bangor, Maine, and, helped him to get a victory that night. He ended up knocking Tavares out and secured his job and signed another, I think he signed I can't remember, I think he signed a 6-fight deal or something like that, but wouldn't quote me on that. But he signed a new deal anyways with the UFC, and so now I'm preparing to get him ready. We're starting his camp right now and getting him ready for his fight, which will happen on January 31st when he faces Thalassaitis.
Now, since you've been working with Tim Boetsch, what tools do you think you've actually, added to his arsenal to make him that much of a better fighter?
Well, here's the thing. With Tim Boetsch, and I take a different perspective when I train people, than I think a lot of trainers do. And you got to treat everybody. Everybody has to be treated different, not only as an individual person, but also you have to treat them differently according to where they are in their prospective MMA career, or even if they're not going to be an MMA fighter. I mean, obviously you train those people differently too. So with Tim Boetsch, what I think, in my opinion, what happened with Tim Boetsch previously, because I knew Tim before he was an MMA fighter. I knew Tim and trained with Tim when Tim first had his first few MMA fights. And then I trained with Tim when Tim was in UFC, and I brought him to Sitio Tong with me with Mark Delagrati. And now I'm with him now afterwards. So I've seen him throughout his career. And my opinion was that when Tim got into the UFC, he thought, which a lot of fighters do, is that they got to go out and they got to find these new trainers that will, revamp their game. And what I think happened with Tim is that, he trained with a few different trainers, and some of them, said to Tim, okay, well, what we need to do is we need to rebuild you. You need to fight like this. You need to do this. Don't do this anymore. Started to change Tim and wanted him to fight the way they thought he should fight. And my advice to Tim when we talked was, listen, you got to the UFC off the way that you fight. It makes no sense for me now as a coach to tell you to fight like me. I was known for my, UFC always talked about my footwork. I was known for my footwork. I was known for my counterpunching style. I go, my style would not work for you, Tim. You're a killer. You're a hunter. You're the kind of guy that needs to go out there and you need to be in a guy's face. You need to beat him up. You need to throw him on the ground. You need to beat him up on the ground. Your style needs to be a very aggressive hunting style. And so the whole dancing around, the footwork, counterpunching isn't something that I think you should be doing. I think that, if you should be pressing the attack, and then, through the attack of you throwing, you're the machine gun, the never revolver. The guy that you're fighting is trying to take his time to pick at you but you're just unloading on them, and that's what I think your style was before you got in the UFC, and I think that when you got into the UFC, you tried to become a technical fighter. Now, technique has its place, but I mean, you're not called, and you're not called the barbarian for no reason. I mean, you're that's how you got to fight.
Right.
So, we watched videos of his old fights, the way he used to fight, and then we watched videos of his UFC fight and saw, I said, okay, now look at this. You were trying to be technical with Okami, and you were getting your ass kicked, and then look what happened in that last round where you're behind on all the scorecards. You don't have a chance of winning other than knocking this guy out. You need to fight every fight going forward like you did in the last round of Okami. Every fight you fight, if you go in there and you believe you're going to lose your job if you don't win this fight, and you just fight every fight where you're going out there and the only thing on your mind is smashing your opponent to pieces, then you're going to win fights. But I think that if you go into the fight and you're going to overanalyze the fight, and you're going to overthink it, and you're going to, try to outscore a guy, that's not your game. That was my game. My game was to analyze and outscore the guys. That's not your game. So, anyways, long story short, Tim somewhat agreed with me, and then had his fight, was victorious, and now. And that's exactly what our plan is. Our plan is to, I'm going to take Tim. I want him to fight the way that Tim should fight, the way he's fought before the UFC and when he first got in the UFC, and just make it faster, stronger, and better. And that's it. All you got to do is look at the first fight he had in the UFC, where he fought, what was his name, and Tim was expected to lose that fight too. And Tim, it was crazy. He went out there, got right in the guy's face, smashed him all around the ring, and then had that nasty takedown where all he did basically had an underhooking. David Heath, and picked David Heath up over his head and dropped him on his head and just punched his face in. So. Yeah. That's what I said to Tim. I go, every fight you fight needs to be like that, and that's what we're doing.
Okay. So since you are an experienced competitor, you fought in some of the highest promotion, the UFC and all, and now you are a coach. What advice would you give to fighters that are coming in, some young fighters? What advice would you give to them?
Well, my advice would be, surround yourself with people who legitimately love and care for you. I think that's more important than, going to the biggest team that's out there. I mean, a lot of guys that I knew back in the day, as soon as they started to break in, they were with their teams that they started with, and then all of a sudden they get the call for the UFC, and they leave their teams and they go join, whether it's Greg Jackson or it's American Top Team or Black Zillions or whatever, these big teams. Don't get me wrong, those are great teams, and I think that if you have friends or family and people involved in that and in those areas, I think that's a good idea. But I think it's best to surround yourself with people that legitimately love and care for you, because they will always do and tell you the truth and do the right thing for you, because that's what the definition of caring and loving for somebody is. And that's what I would say. I would say, and that's what I did. I know that Mark Delagrati was like, a brother to me, and I know he cared for me and loved me like a brother, and that's why, I stayed with Mark. And, through the ups and downs of my career, I never said, well, this is happening because of my lack of coaching, that I'm getting, or that, I don't have good enough sparring partners, so I'm associating it to that. We won together and we lost together. And, I think that that's really important. And and you see these things where people get, it happened a lot in boxing, and that's where I came from, where I would see these professional boxers go on a tear, and they're doing great. They win a world title. Then they finally lose a fight, and then they drop their whole team. They drop their trainers. They get new managers. They do all that, and they think that this is going to revamp them. They place the blame on everybody else rather than, taking ownership. And, my manager that I had for my whole time as an MMA fighter, the manager I met in 1993. And so, you know what I mean? And that's what I mean. That's honestly the best advice that I can give is surround yourself with people who care for you.
Now, following on what Eddie said, you were a successful boxer. You had great heights in your career. You made it to the best promotion in mixed martial arts in the UFC. Out of all of that, amateur, professional, whatever, what's the absolute highlight of your career? Can you tell us?
Well, the absolute highlight of my career would obviously, I think everybody knows what it is, and that would be the night that I got to fight in Dublin, Ireland, and I got to fight Chris Lytle, and actually pulled off the win. That would be the highlight of my career.
Definitely. Speaking of Ireland, there's a young up-and-coming fighter from Ireland, Conor McGregor. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, you know what? Everybody would have, I think people assume that I would have watched like all of Conor McGregor's fights and stuff, and that, just like everybody else does, whenever I see people, out in public, they go, "Hey, what did you think about the fight this weekend? What do you think about this?" And, the thing is that fighting is what I've done. I've had over 200 recorded, MMA, kickboxing, professional boxing, amateur kickboxing, fights. And I started in 1980, maybe 1985, I think, or 86, I started actually fighting, competitively as an amateur boxer. And I went to the Junior Olympics for Taekwondo and all that stuff. So, I don't watch the fights, and I know people are going to be shocked about this, especially I haven't watched them for quite a while now. My wife has always, told me, that's what you've done for a living. So when you leave the house, you're the Irish hand grenade. When you go to the gym, you're the Irish hand grenade. But when you're home, you're my husband, and you're the father of these children. And I would prefer, rather than to have the fighting on here at the house, which is what you're surrounded by and what you do for a living, I would rather we did things, as a family. And you know what? That made a lot of sense. So,
yeah.
That's what I do, and don't get me wrong, I sneak away with my laptop, or if my wife falls asleep, I go sneak away and I go watch fights. But, so to answer your question about Conor McGregor, I've only seen, out of everything that everybody talks about him, I've only seen his last fight. So after seeing that fight, that was with, what's the young guy's name? Dustin Poirier.
Dustin Poirier.
Poirier. So after watching him fight Dustin Poirier, I decided, I was like, wow, okay, wait a minute, this guy is, pretty charismatic and looked very athletic. So I punched his name up on YouTube, and I watched some highlight reels and some stuff of him, and I was really impressed. So this is what my thoughts are on him right now, is that he obviously possesses he possesses athletic ability. He possesses power. He hits hard. And he possesses a unique style. And I think that is what is really winning fights right now in mixed martial arts. We went through different time periods of mixed martial arts. At the beginning, it was the time of the grappler. Then it became time of the wrestler. And then your Kerrs and your Colemans and your Severins were dominating the fight. Then all of a sudden it came back to the time of the strikers. Then Vanderlei Silva, Mirko Kroka, these strikers came back. Or Chuck Liddell, thank you. Yeah, Chuck Liddell. Those guys, Vitor Belfort, started winning. Then what happened is then it became time of the athlete. And that's right now what's happening is that, the guys that are the best athletes, it's no longer the really tough fighters or whatever. It's the guys that are like, John Jones, the Mighty Mouse. I mean, you got these guys that are just super, super athletic that are winning the fights. Now, the guys that are also winning fights and sneaking in are the guys that are hard to figure out. The guys that bring something to the table that you can't just go out and find a sparring partner that mimics them. That's why Lyoto Machida had such a long reign of winning fights, was because how do you go out and find a black belt Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy who fights like an eclectic karate style but kicks more like a Muay Thai guy? He was just really difficult to figure out, and he really controlled that range of fighting really well. And Chuck Liddell would kind of fall into that kind of style too. Chuck Liddell was a very awkward, odd fighting, punching style. He didn't, he was knocking guys out with his hands, but he didn't fight like a boxer, and so there's a lot of guys out there that are fighting in that weird, awkward style, and that's what I see with Conor McGregor. He's going to be hard to figure out. He's going to be hard to get the timing down. And timing is the most essential thing in fighting. It doesn't come down to technique and how much you know. What it comes down to is, can you get there and hit the target? And can you hit the target when you see it? That's timing. And, a perfect example of some of the greatest timing, in my opinion, ever in MMA was Fedor Emelianenko. And, here's a guy that breaks his hand 15 times because he punches with that casting punch, which technically that's a horrible, horrible punch to throw technically. I mean, it breaks all mathematics and body mechanics and kinesiology. You shouldn't throw your punches that way. But, man, did he knock out, everybody that he hit. He was knocking people out left and right. And, you could look at his grappling and you could critique that. And your jiu-jitsu guys that would say, oh, I don't think his grappling's that good. But his timing was just unbelievable. And guys with great timing, you become world champions. I mean, George Foreman at one time was a great big fat guy who still won the world title. He didn't have speed. You could see the punch, but you couldn't get out of the way of it because of the timing. And timing is, in my opinion, something that Conor McGregor possesses, and it's going to make him going to keep winning them fights. And here's the way, timing goes. Timing is usually the first thing to leave you too as you get older. First it's your speed, then it comes timing, and then it's time to hang it up.
Definitely. I mean, you talked a lot about on a bunch of different fighters. If you could wake up tomorrow and you're in your prime, you could fight any fighter, retired, active now, in any weight class. Who would it be?
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, if I could go to when I was at my best, which I believe was around 2008, is probably when I was at my best. I was healthy. I didn't have a whole lot of injuries or anything. I had some, but they weren't, they weren't really impeding my performance. if I could be me in 2008, I would like to fight Gomi when he was at his best too. You know, I think he's way, 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 way past his prime. But I think it would have been a really cool fight to have, and a fight that the fans would have liked to have seen if maybe the Irish Hand Grenade of 2008 fought Gomi of 2007 or 2008 also. I think that would have been a great fight to have.
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome fight that would definitely be a fan pleaser.
Definitely turn some heads. Now, if you don't mind me asking, obviously, you know, you were great in that time frame. So was Gomi, but there's a lot of great people in that era. Why Gomi?
Well, I think the reason why is stylistically. You know,
yeah.
I think that stylistically, he was somebody who was a flat-footed, hard striker, you know, and could take a shot, could take a punch. So, to me, that would make sense, you know, kind of like, you know, a Roberto Duran versus a Sugar Ray Leonard fight. You know, he would be more the Roberto Duran, and I would be more the Leonard guy, because I wouldn't stand directly in front of him. I would make sure that I was punching him from angles and moving a lot. And it's very rare that you're going to see two southpaws fight each other too. And whenever that happens, it's always a bloody mess, you know. So I think that just would have been one of those fights that unfortunately was missed. And I think it would have been a great fight to see back then. And I really wanted that fight. I was already with the UFC. And I asked the UFC right after I asked Dana, right after the fight where I fought Paul Kelly. So after fighting Paul Kelly in Birmingham, England, I mentioned to Dana, I said, man, you know what? I would do anything if somehow we could work it out that either A, I could fight Gomi over there, or if you guys ever could get Gomi. And that was, you know, obviously a couple years before they required Pride, and, you know, and that could have happened. So.
Now, staying in the past just for a minute, you know, you've had a long career. What would you change, if anything? Any mistakes, anything that you made, you think you could have made a better decision at? You know, anything to change?
Yeah, you know, I think that if I could go back, there's a couple of them, but if I could go back before the Hardy fight, when I fought Dan Hardy, I would, you know, talk to myself about, you know, chilling out, not getting so emotional, and, you know, and not probably lifting as much as I did, because I did a lot of power training to really work on my physical power to be able to, you know, just manhandle him in the clinching and on the ground. You know, that would be one of the things that if I could go back, I would do. I would talk to myself about and try to hopefully change.
Okay. You mentioned Dan Hardy. What is I know back in the day you guys didn't like each other too much. You guys have a good relationship now, or is there still a little bit of bad blood?
No, yeah, we're fine, man. We've talked to each other since then. Not a whole lot, but I mean we've bumped into each other, and you know, it was a great rivalry. It's actually still, because I go over to Europe still. I just was over there. I was over there in July. I spent a couple weeks in Germany and the UK and Belgium. I traveled all around there for a few weeks. And in Germany, it's still the number one watched fight. So ever is that fight. So the Germans really ate up that rivalry. So, you know, we did a good job, I think, of selling that fight, and you know, and he said things that he said that he thought were good things to say for promoting the fight, and I took a different way. But yeah, we've seen each other and squashed it.
So would you say,
What's that?
You know, unfortunately, you let him get in your head for that fight?
Yeah, and I got emotional for that fight. I was pretty pissed off, and I think it was the first time, maybe not, I don't know, but I believe it might have been the first time, and I think still the only time, that the UFC, even though we were a co-main event for that fight, they didn't allow either one of us to go to the press conference or any of that stuff, and they kept us separated. They made sure that the hotel kept us on opposite floors. They did everything they could do to keep us away from each other, because I was dead serious that if I had bumped into him or if I had seen him, and I tried to be as professional as I can, but I really, really at that time I wanted to fight him outside of MMA. I really wanted to, have a street type altercation with him, and then even afterwards, I told everybody, I said, it ain't over, because if I see him, at a restaurant, I'll follow him into the bathroom and I'll smash his head in. So I was pretty, the street in me really came out for a while. It took me quite a while to get over that. And, it's unfortunate that I did take it that way. I wish I hadn't. Like I said, if I could go back, I guess I would have given myself a little bit of counseling. But, that's just what happens sometimes, when things go that way and you grow up like I did, you just don't take that stuff well.
Now, would you say Dan is the only fighter to ever accomplish getting you off your game, getting in your head, and bringing that side of Marcus Davis out? Is he the only fighter that's ever been able to do that to you in your career?
Yeah, I would say that in, I myself, as I was my biggest enemy as far as that stuff went. I mean, there were fights that I had that I really, underestimated certain opponents, or even, went in with an expectation that the fight was going to be much worse. I mean, that's, the fighting game is very, very mental. But in the sport of fighting, I never had that problem. I always had a really bad temper as a kid growing up, and I got in a lot of fights growing up. I got in street fights from Bangor, Maine to Boston, Massachusetts. So, as a professional athlete, as a fighter, yeah, he definitely, he stuck that knife in there and he twisted it. Yeah, I went crazy.
You said about how you got into a lot of street fights when you were a kid and all. Is that where you acquired the name the Irish Hand Grenade?
No, I actually got the name the Irish Hand Grenade when I turned pro in boxing, and I was living in Boston. I was living in Massachusetts, and I was training with my boxing coach at the time, who was Joe Lake, and we were always training in Somerville at this place called the World Gym, but there was a boxing gym inside of it. And there was this old guy that used to watch us spar like every Saturday. And I don't know, it's like in his 70s or something. And every time I came in, he would say, "It's the Irish Hand Grenade." And he would always say, "What's up, Irish?" And whenever I was boxing, he'd say the Irish Hand Grenade. So I went up to him and I said, "Why do you keep calling me the Irish Hand Grenade?" And he said, "Well, I knew a guy back in the 50s that was a boxer, and he was called the Irish Hand Grenade, and you could be his son." He goes, "You guys almost look like twins." And he goes, "And when you fight like him too." He goes, "He was a southpaw too." So apparently this was this guy's friend. So then my next fight, I get called out, and they called me out as the Irish Hand Grenade. And I said to my coach, I said, "Did you hear that? They called me the Irish Hand Grenade, just like that old guy did." And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "They asked me what your nickname was, and I told them that you were the Irish Hand Grenade because I just thought it fit." and that was it. That was how it happened.
So it got announced over the intercom, and you had no idea that you had a nickname at the time.
Yeah, nope, I didn't even know. I had other people had called me other names, but they were never names that I wanted or liked. So, the Irish hand grenade, when that got said, I kind of just went, yeah, that's kind of cool, I guess that's cool. And so that just stuck, and that was what it was from there on. Sometimes I would hear them announce me as the Irish grenade, or sometimes it was the Irish hand grenade, and then after a while it just kept being called the Irish hand grenade.
Now, following up on that, I'm kind of curious. You had a chuckle when you said that other nicknames that you didn't like. Can you throw out some of those for us?
Oh, well, one was because I even back then, we're talking 1993 and to 1995 until I was called the Irish hand grenade. They used to call me, one was the Bangor Bleeder, because I was from Bangor, Maine, and every time I fought, I bled all over the place, so people thought that was pretty funny. And then one was called, because I was from Bangor also, they called me Bang Bang, which I just thought it was really dumb. So I heard people go, hey, it's Marcus Bang Bang Davis from Bangor, Maine, and so I heard a lot of these lame things, and you can't. I know that people do this. People go out and they name themselves. They call themselves. I guess the Nightmare is pretty popular for calling yourself, but people will call themselves the Nightmare or whatever. They come up with their own name, and you're not supposed to do that. Somebody else is supposed to give you that name, and that's how all of mine ever came. Where other people called me them, and the Irish hand grenade was the one that stuck.
Well, it's very fitting, I'll say that.
So,
oh, thanks. Appreciate it.
Since you have fought in the UFC, and a lot of other fighters that are UFC veterans, since they've left the UFC, they've had some bad things to say about the UFC. What's your position on Dana White and the people at the UFC and Zuffa?
I have absolutely nothing negative to say. My experiences with the UFC were completely positive. I was treated very, very fairly. I made a lot of decent money. And I know, my story would be very boring. I was happy. And like I said, Dana, Lorenzo, Frank, Fertitta, all of them treated me really well. And I really couldn't tell you anything that would be good gossip, that they ever did. I bonused a lot of times in the UFC, and then I got a lot of backdoor bonuses. So the times that maybe I thought that I won knockout of the night or I won submission of the night, and it was given to somebody else, they would still give me a good sized bonus and tell me, listen, they're all voting on it. So, they have 4 or 5 guys voting on it. And they would say, 2 of them thought you won, but, they ended up giving it to the other guy. So we're going to give you this. So that's what I mean. I thought that they treated me really well. I knew what I was going to make before the fight. I negotiated and had the amount of money that I was going to make was negotiated. So nothing was going to be a surprise. So anything I made more than that, I was very grateful for. And I don't think that you see that a lot now. How do you not know when you're doing and you're signing these contracts, if you're fighting for 3 fight or 6 fight deals, and it says you're going to make X amount of money? How dare you, after getting paid that, do you bitch about it? It doesn't make any sense. If they're not offering you what you want, you have the opportunity to leave. Then do it. So that's just the way I look at it.
And I read a report earlier, and it was from Chael, essentially claiming the same thing. He said, what you signed on the dotted line for, and it's the ones that, when they retire and they talk bad about the UFC, and, it's the ones that want to play hardball with Dana that are the ones that, kind of get the shaft. And if you want to play easy with Dana and you want to just do what you're told, then everything is gravy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole thing is this, is like, when Dana asked me to do things, he never asked me to do anything that was not business oriented, okay? So he never asked me to do something that I thought was inappropriate, ever. And as long as I was under contract, I worked for the UFC. So if he asked me to go someplace and to talk to somebody or to go, I felt privileged and honored to do so because that was my job. That's what you do. So, I don't get caught up. I won't even run. I hear things. People will say, "Oh, did you hear about so and so? He only got this much money and he's saying this." I won't even read it. I won't even pay attention to it. It's not worth my time because that's that's his problem. If he doesn't like what he's getting paid, he can go someplace else. He can try to go get what he thinks he's worth, and that's it. I mean, there's no other really any other discussion to have of that. I mean, if you don't think you're getting paid what you want, then don't work there.
All right. Well, final question. We're going to bring it down. I want to ask: is there anybody you want to thank? Any shout outs you want to give? I'm going to give the floor to you. To any last words you want to say?
Oh no, I mean I'm retired now, so the only thing I would say is I really appreciate everybody who supported me through my MMA career. It meant a lot, and if you ever see me out and about, I'm an open book. I'm not, I'm a real down-to-earth guy, so, I'm approachable. So come on over and shake my hand, and it'll be my honor.
Awesome, Marcus. That's going to do it for us. On behalf of Eddie, we appreciate your time. It was insightful. It was a lot of fun. Best of luck in all your future endeavors, man.
All right, guys. You too. God bless.
All right. That'll do it for Marcus Davis, Eddie Dowd, and myself, Adam Christ. Make sure you keep it locked in the future to MMAbarn.org with promo code CHRIST. Thanks a lot.